At the grandest charity gala of the year, the ballroom shimmered with golden chandeliers, laughter, and the clinking of crystal glasses. The wealthiest people in the city gathered in their glittering gowns and polished suits, exchanging stories of success as music played softly in the background. In the center of it all sat Harrison, a billionaire CEO whose confidence filled the room as much as the chandelier's glow. His voice carried over the chatter, boasting about his achievements, his businesses, his place above the rest. But as his eyes wandered, they landed on someone who didn't belong among the luxury. At the edge of the room stood a little girl, frail and barefoot, her eyes downcast, her dress worn thin. She had been brought by a local orphanage, a living reminder of the very cause the gala was meant to support. Yet to many, she was invisible, just another face in need. Harrison, with a smug smirk, raised his glass and announced loudly to his circle, "If she can play the piano, I'll adopt her." His words dripped with arrogance, meant as nothing more than a cruel joke. The table erupted in laughter. To them, the idea was ridiculous. What could this poor child possibly know of grand pianos and music? But the girl did not laugh. She lifted her gaze, her eyes steady, holding something no one expected, quiet determination. The laughter echoed, but the moment belonged to her. Slowly, she stepped forward. The marble floor seemed to echo her every step as she made her way to the grand piano that gleamed in the center of the room. Guests exchanged amused glances, whispering under their breath, waiting for her to fail, ready for another round of laughter at her expense. She climbed onto the bench, her small frame almost swallowed by the massive instrument. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling, uncertain, as though they carried the weight of the entire room's judgment. For a long moment, the air hung heavy with anticipation. And then, she played. The first notes were soft, hesitant, almost fragile. But then another followed, and another, until the melody began to grow. Within moments, the sound filled the room, blooming into something powerful and breathtaking. It wasn't just music, it was a story. A story of hunger, of loneliness, of nights spent staring at the stars, wondering if anyone in the world cared. Each note was heavy with sorrow, yet carried the spark of hope, fragile but unbroken. The ballroom, once filled with laughter, fell silent. Glasses were lowered. Conversation stopped. Even the chandeliers seemed to shimmer in rhythm with the melody. A woman in pearls pressed a handkerchief to her eyes. A man known for his ruthlessness in business turned away, ashamed of the tear sliding down his cheek. And then there was Harrison. At first, he sat frozen, his trademark smirk gone, his chest tightening as if the music had reached inside and gripped his heart. The melody pulled him back to a time he had tried to forget, a boyhood of hunger and struggle, when his dreams seemed impossibly far away. He remembered nights lying awake, not knowing if tomorrow would bring food or emptiness. Somewhere along the road to wealth, he had buried that child within him, replacing pain with pride, vulnerability with arrogance. But now, with each note, the girl was tearing down those walls. She wasn't simply playing a piano, she was giving voice to every hardship he had once known. And for the first time in decades, his heart ached not from ambition, but from compassion. The music swelled higher, rising and falling like waves of memory and emotion. It was as if her soul was speaking directly to his own. The audience sat captivated, bound together by the invisible thread of her song, reminded of something they had all forgotten, the simple, undeniable truth that beauty and strength can rise from even the hardest of places. Then, as the final notes trembled into the air, silence returned. No one dared move, as though any sound might shatter the fragile magic she had created. The little girl sat frozen, her hands resting on the keys, afraid to look up. Was it enough? Or would they laugh again? And then, applause. The ballroom erupted, people rising to their feet, clapping until their hands stung, tears streaming down their faces. But amid the thunderous applause, the girl remained still, her head bowed, uncertain of her worth. That's when footsteps echoed across the marble. Harrison rose from his seat and walked toward her. His face, once hard with arrogance, was softened now, his eyes glistening. He reached the piano and stood before the trembling child. His voice, always sharp and commanding, cracked as he whispered, "From today, you are my daughter." Gasps rippled through the hall. Some clasped their hands over their mouths, others broke into fresh tears. The little girl's eyes widened, her lips quivering as tears spilled down her cheeks. For a moment, she could not move, then Harrison knelt and wrapped his arms around her. It was not a gesture for show, not for pride, but a vow. A man who had mocked her now promised to protect her. Months passed, and life changed in ways neither could have imagined. The grand piano no longer stood as a symbol of wealth in a cold ballroom, it became the heart of a new home. The girl, once a nameless orphan, now had a room of her own, clothes that fit, and, most importantly, someone to call father. Sunlight poured into the music room one morning as she sat at the piano again. But this time, she wasn't playing alone. Harrison sat beside her, clumsy fingers striking the wrong keys, laughing at his mistakes. She giggled, gently correcting him, her small hand guiding his larger one. And he laughed too, not the hollow laugh of a powerful CEO, but the free, joyful laugh of a man rediscovering his heart. Neighbors who passed by often paused outside, listening to the unusual duet. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. Because their music carried something greater than polished notes, it carried love, redemption, and the proof that family isn't always written in blood, but in choice. The man who once mocked an orphan had been transformed by her courage. The girl who once stood alone now had someone who called her daughter. And as their melody rose into the sunlit air, it carried a message beyond the walls of their home, that one act of compassion can change not just a life, but two hearts forever.